Hello, my name is Joey Sosaki, and this is week 3, section 3, where we're going to discuss plane tickets and using a budget estimator tool. Your desired outcomes for today is that you're going to feel confident pursuing plane tickets. There's a lot of hunting involved with that, and we want to make sure you're tethered with your team leads during that process. Additionally, we're going to show you how to use a budget estimator tool so that you can update your support letter with a more accurate estimation of your total trip cost for your family. Before we jump into content, I just want to go to the classroom for this module. There's really 4 larger steps. You're first going to navigate this week 3.3 document, which we're going to go through in this video. The second, we're going to use this Japan 2020 trip proposal document, and I'll let you know when we do that. And then you're going to use this fundraising process document in order to access some of these other tools. And then there's a financial tracker, which we'll use at the end. That's the 4th step. So I just want to let you know everything you need is in this inclusive lesson for 3.3. So first step, plane tickets. As previously mentioned, our trips are between $2,700 and $4,200 per person. One of the large drivers of that cost differential is airfare, depending on where you're flying from, when you're flying, how long before your trip you actually purchase the tickets. All of these things will drive your cost up or down, which is why initially this is a very loose budget. So I want to talk through some of our best practices for getting plane tickets. The first part is reviewing your trip proposal document. This is going to help you understand what day and time you need to be in Japan. So if we go to classrooms, that's this proposal right here for the 2020 team. If we go ahead and open this, this is going to lay out why Japan, what our mission is, what area we're going to, who our partners are, what each team looks like, what all the ministry needs are. But then where it gets helpful is we have these trip summaries on slides 12 and 13 for this example. So if you're in the Shingu Tokyo team, you would fly to Osaka on Saturday 8-8. You're going to land there 8-9. You're going to fly out 8-24, which is a Monday. Now, you're going to want to work with your team leads in the event that things with our partners shift by a day or two. And even though this says Sunday, we may want to get more specific, like make sure you land on Sunday between noon and 6 p.m. because we have to drive 2 hours to get to a church or something like that. So this is a great starting point for you to understand generically when you need to be in Japan, and then work with your team leads to make sure that this is still the source of truth concerning the actual hour or time. Additionally, this will help you figure out exactly how many days you'll be in Japan. So you'll want to take the day that you land, the day that you leave, and subtract those 2 dates. And then that'll be your total time. You'll need that information a little bit. We'll explain why. So step 1, look at the trip proposal. Step 2, work with your team lead to confirm arrival and departure dates. And I would even say date-times, because that's going to bound when you can purchase tickets. Step 3, if you've never done this before, is use an Incognito Browser when researching prices. So there's something called cookies. Cookies track what you've been looking at, and websites that sell tickets will actually track what flights you've looked at, and then they will start to increase the costs that you see because they can tell you're trying to get somewhere. So it can actually force your estimates to go up, both in that moment and in the future. So what you can do is if I go and click these triple dots, this is for Chrome. I don't know how it works for other browsers. You can click New Incognito window, and then that will open a black browser. And now this won't be storing cookies. So this will allow you to get the best flights possible using whatever website you're searching on. Going back to that main document, you can use whichever travel site you prefer. Historically, I've used Priceline and Expedia. Some people prefer to call airlines directly. That's totally fine. Do what's right for you. And now we're going to take a little bit of time to discuss trade-offs for flights, because a lot of times people think I just need to get literally the cheapest flight possible. And I and some of us don't personally agree with that philosophy. We're called to bring excellence in ministry to Japan, and flights are a large portion of bringing that excellence. If you show up to Japan and you're destroyed because you've had 7 layovers and missed 2 flights, you will miss key aspects of the ministry and you won't be present. So we're going to discuss kind of the difference between round-trip one-ways and multi-destinations. We're going to discuss layover risk, so like how short is too short for a layover, how important total travel time is, especially if you have children and you're serving with us, the amount of layovers that are desired before this gets excessive, and then how much buffer you want between arrival and your first ministry moment. And I'd even say how much buffer you want between departure and your first life integration. So first day you go back to work or back to school. All of these things matter, and we want to make sure you feel like you're allowed to look at all those things, because less layovers may increase your cost by $200 per ticket or by $400, right? There could be some threshold there, and you have to kind of seek the Lord on what ticket makes sense for you to get there and be effective in your ministry. And how much does God desire for the church to raise support in order to send you? So we don't want to think that cost is the only factor when looking at this. So let's jump into a little bit of that. I just want to explore this for you. So I'm using Priceline in this example. So I'm going from CVG, which is Cincinnati, to Tokyo, and I'm departing and returning by these given dates. Where things get complicated is if I have 2 adults, I have 1 child over 2 and 1 lap child under 2. If I click done and search, Priceline doesn't do infants on international flights. Me and my wife have been burned by that in the past. Make sure that if you're traveling with a lap child, your international flights and all your connections actually have your lap child on them, or you can end up having your team move forward without you, which has happened. So if we go to the search, I'm just going to kind of show you what generally shows up. There's lots of different options, nonstop up to 1 stop, up to 2 stops. They'll typically put this express deal. I would highly advise to not do anything like this, because you have no idea how many layovers will happen, which airline you're on, what time you exactly line up. Some people, if you're just going for pure cost, this is great. Oh no. But this uncertainty is not ideal for our ministry. So that's kind of the first things. I would try to eliminate up to 2 stops and up to 1 stop, even if it'll let you. I didn't even know there's a non-stop from CVG. No, that's not possible. Okay, up to 2 stops. And then you can adjust your takeoff and landing based on when you need to be in different locations. But some things you want to look at that I kind of inherently look at: how many connections I have, if it's a large or small airport that I'm connecting through, or something that I'm familiar with or not familiar with. That's what's going to give me a confidence. Like O'Hare, 45 minutes is pretty short, especially if this initial domestic flight from CVG to O'Hare is delayed. Then I'm missing the international leg from O'Hare to Haneda, and that might put my ministry back by 12 hours. I don't know how frequently these international flights are leaving from O'Hare. So those are the kinds of risks you want to consider. Now, we've had flights that have been delayed by, I'm listening the word, hurricanes and typhoons in Japan and things like that. Travel is complicated and difficult. So you want to approach it with as much buffer as you can, but within reason. And then there's just aspects where God knows when you're supposed to be there. So for some people like myself, this is a huge source of anxiety that I'm constantly tested with. For others, you just naturally fly. You can do it with short layovers, multiple layovers, and you get there and you're totally fine. For me, traveling with my family, it's a lot more involved. It's kind of complicated. The other thing, which I kind of discussed initially, there's this idea of round trip, one way, and multi-destination. Round trip will always be cheaper if you are flying in and out of the same airport. So if you're flying to Tokyo doing ministry and flying out of Tokyo, Things get more complicated if you fly into Tokyo for a week of ministry, take a train somewhere else or a domestic flight somewhere else, and then try to fly out of a different airport. Sometimes round trip will still be cheapest, but it makes your timing maybe less ideal, or maybe you have more layovers. So you might want to look at a multi-destination, which will still try to put you under the same like Delta Delta or United United, so it's slightly cheaper, but it might not be the most ideal if you need to get home and not use as much vacation time. Sometimes you will have to do one-way legs, a one-way trip there, a one-way trip back. It'll be a bit more expensive, but you'll have the most optimal ministry timing. So those are some general best practices around it that we've just developed over the years, but there's no like hard laws about this. That's why we let you book your flights based on what you think makes sense, but make sure you're tethered with your team leads before you purchase anything. You'll see a crazy deal and everyone thinks they need to just buy it, but make sure you have things cleared before you purchase anything. So that's everything on flights that I have. The other thing that you'll want to look into, let's say that we did all our flights and we know what they cost. The next thing we're going to do is use this budget estimator tool. So if you remember from last training, we had this setting up fundraising process document. You can access it from here, or you can access it from this link. They both work. If I zoom out quickly, this is how you join the Beautiful Feet Project, what your fundraising path is. I'm going to zoom back in. So you filled out this fundraising form, and then you made a support letter. The support letter is now assigned in Google Classroom. From there, you updated your support letter and turned it in for review. In parallel, what you need to do next is you're going to review your team's trip proposal document that we just went through. That was this thing right here. You're then going to research flight costs, international and domestic, as well as high-speed rail. So if you are traveling between, say, Tokyo, which is way up here in Shingu, Wakayama, this is not a cheap train. This is a bullet train from Tokyo to Nagoya, and then this is a long commuter train. This is 16,500 yen. If you eliminate 2 zeros, it's $165. That's a good math trick. So what you need to do is figure out what these long rails cost for your whole family. And typically children, I believe, under the age of 5 don't pay anything for these, or maybe it's the age of 2. We'll have to do some research, but try to price these long train travels, and then what you'll do is you're going to go to this budget tracking form with family and flight information. So you'll click this link. It's going to open another thing, and we're going to do this real live. So you could pick your family name. We'll say Isosaki for me, or you could type in a name. How many adults are with you? It'll be me and my wife. How many children older than 2? We have 1 child over 2. How many children younger than 2? We have 1. How many days will you be in Japan, including arrival and departure days? We'll say we'll be there for 16 days. What's your total adult plus children airfare estimation for international flights? So for me, we'll say that's $6,200. I could enter it like that. I would prefer if you put it in with that. It just helps. What's your total airfare domestic? So this would be like if you are flying, you fly to Tokyo and you do a week of ministry, and then you take a flight from Tokyo to Osaka to do a week of ministry. That happens in our trips sometimes, as opposed to taking rail. So if you had a domestic flight, you would enter that amount, but I don't, so I'm just going to say 0.00. And then what's your high-speed rail from city to city travel? So if we go back to this was $165. So that's for 1. I have 2 adults, so we'll say that's $330. So now if I click submit, you'll say your response is recorded. We're going to go back to this document, and after we've completed the budget form, we're then going to review our trip total cost on the Budget Trip Summary tab of the Financial Tracker. So this document is the Financial Tracker, which you can also access from classrooms at any time. And then we're going to want to find the Budget Trip Summary tab on the tracker. So let me show you what that looks like. So if we click here, it's going to open this document right here. And we'll be able to see, these were all those questions I just answered, and we'll be able to see everyone's input from the team. Steven was a test I did, so we could see all of that information. Looks great. So now if we go to this Budget Trip Summary tab, which is at the bottom, this is where things get fun. So you can see the date that things were entered. So this is a little bit later. And then if you scroll to the right, you can everything that's in blue was what you entered on the form. Everything in purple are calculated based on the number of adults, old children, and young children you have. So we have the cost of rail for local trains. So this is assuming you're on a train every other day, riding around Tokyo. We have hotel Airbnb. So we're assuming you're going to stay at a hotel or an Airbnb when you arrive that day and when you leave the day before your flight. We're anticipating $50 per person and people sharing Airbnbs. And then we have church lodging. So that's estimated at $20 a day. That covers water and heating. Some churches it might be $30 a day per person. It kind of varies. And then food costs per trip per family. So we're assuming about $40 per day for adult, $20 per day per child, $0 for babies. Naturally, you can try to drive this cost down, or if you want to have more experiences, it'll go up. We did want to do sightseeing or cultural experiences as well, because that's a large part of our ministry is you connect with people as you do. It's a Japanese culture thing. So you might go and see Tokyo Tower or do some kind of experience. Some of these are a little bit more expensive. So this will calculate based on all of your kids and the experiences. And then if you go all the way to the right, you can see your total trip cost per person. So originally my budget that I would need to raise is $9,800, but I was able to find a ticket that's $50 cheaper. I refilled out the form, and now my overall budget is $9,700. So as you guys continue to hunt for tickets and you're trying to understand what's this whole thing going to cost, you can keep filling out this tracking form. You could submit another response, and then this sheet will keep updating, and you just look at the lowest family name there. So I'm hopeful that this will be helpful to you. After you do that, you can take your trip cost estimate and add it to your support letter, and now you can start to mail letters to everybody. So I think that wraps everything up for this module. Feel free to reach out if you get hung up with any of the tools, but we're hopeful that this will give you a good estimate. There are other tabs in this document that we will eventually have you leverage. So we will be tracking our fundraising as well as expenses against our budget. But for now, just stick on the budget tab. We'll teach you how to use these other things later. Awesome. Well, that's all I got. Thanks, guys.